Hey guys, welcome back. It's Maddie here again on my second vlog. Unfortunately, in Mykonos, it's quite cold at the moment, so I'm hiding out in the yoga studio and not by the pool to record this one. So what I wanted to talk about today is narcissism and self-love, and just really exploring the differences between these two words or phrases, as some people can tend to interchange these words when actually they have two very different meanings. So we'll have a look at those today and see what each of those means for us. So let's talk about self-love. Now, self-love can be a very loaded word. People tend to feel a lot of emotions when we talk about self-love. One of them perhaps being unworthiness. People maybe not liking that word because they don't feel worthy of the love that they deserve. So for some people, it can be a bit scary, understandably, as we all have many problems and insecurities that we need to deal with. On the other hand, when people talk about self-love, people can sometimes think towards the more narcissistic tendencies. So, vanity, being in love with yourself, looking in the mirror every second of the day, taking a million selfies. So here we're going to find out the differences. So let's just forget about everything we know or we think we know about the word, and we'll start from scratch, what self-love really is. So self-love can also be related to the term self-acceptance. This doesn't necessarily mean loving yourself for everything entirely. This can mean embracing our flaws, recognizing our problems, knowing that we have many of them, whether that's, problems with our thoughts, our own insecurities, how we look. And rather than judging or scrutinizing ourselves, self-love is all about recognizing that these are there and just accepting it. And then slowly we'll learn to embrace our flaws and maybe be okay with the goofy tooth in our smile. So that's where I want to start from. So self-love, we're embracing who we are. We're not hiding anything. We're not pretending to be something else, trying to fit into the mold. We're just truly being authentic here. So, as you can imagine, this includes having compassion for yourself, the emotions that come up as the days goes on. We have many of them as humans, and just acknowledging each emotion as it arises. Okay, so you wake up, you're in a shit mood. When you love yourself, you're not going to hate yourself for being in a shit mood. You're going to say, okay, I'm feeling this way today. That's okay. I'm not going to try and analyze it or figure it out. I'm just going to sit here and feel what I need to feel and accept where you are right now. After breakfast or some food, like in my case, I get very hangry, you'll probably be okay. On the other hand, if you didn't have much love for yourself in that respect, like I said, you will be annoyed at yourself, angry at yourself for feeling this way, and this will spiral on until it turns into an even more drastic emotion than it started off with. Okay, so you have compassion for yourself. You have compassion for others also, because you can recognize that everyone is just trying to do the best that they can do. Even though sometimes you'll look at them and you'll think, what are you doing with your life? You could be doing this, this, and this to solve your problems. It doesn't matter what you think. They are doing the best that they can, and you just have to stand back and give them as much support as they need without trying to control their lives or say that you know how you can solve their problems. That's not the case. People need to figure things out for themselves, and all you can do is be that loving support. When it comes to self-love, what we also need to be doing is putting ourselves first. Now, this can seem a little, a little bit contradictory. I'm trying to learn German at the moment, and I'm in Greece right now. All these languages, I'm forgetting the English language. So yes, it can seem a bit contradictory because it can be viewed as selfish. Now, selfish and self-love, another one that is a bit tricky because they do have different meanings. But when we put ourselves first, we are valuing our own feelings and priorities over another. That is not a bad thing, because have you ever been in that situation when someone asks you to do something? Oh, yeah, sure, that's fine, no problem. Without really thinking about how that's going to impact your day and your schedule and your appointments. You may be busy, you may have kids, you may have a lot going on, you may run a business. So that turns into a problem when we start saying yes, yes, yes all the time, but then not prioritizing our own needs. This can lead to resentment for the other person for putting you in this situation, and also for yourself for allowing yourself to be put in these situations. And now when you're constantly saying yes to somebody else, they're not going to start to recognize that you're really putting yourself out there and perhaps delaying what you need to do for them. They're just going to see you as a really helpful person, and they're just going to be like, great, I'm going to ask you every time and not think too much about it. So self-love is really about setting boundaries with other people and yourself, and knowing what you are and what you are not willing to commit to. When I was younger, I used to be a very people-pleasing person, probably stemming from a lot of childhood issues that I won't really go into there. But it only started when I got older that I recognized that my own needs are equally as important. So now when someone asks me to do something, I won't reply straight away. I will pause, think about it, think if this disrupts my flow of priorities throughout the day. If it doesn't, great, I'll lend a favor. If it does, you just have to learn to say no. And it is so hard to say no, but it's just something that you have to practice. It's like a skill that you need to develop. I've never been very good at saying no either, especially in terms of like helping other people. I feel this very strong need to help others and do whatever I can. You just have to learn to say no. And what actually helped me with that is traveling, because when you're traveling, you have all of these crazy situations. You're walking down the street, people are trying to sell you things, and in the end you just learn, no, 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 no. I don't want your jewelry. No, I don't eat meat. I don't want that food. No, thank you. And you just have to be really assertive, which is what I admire about my mum, actually. She's a very strong, assertive woman, and I always wondered whether I would develop that trait, but I really think I'm getting there, and it is an important part of self-love, so learn to say no. Okay, so when you're practicing self-love, you are taking care of yourself. This doesn't necessarily mean spending loads of money, going to the spa, having a pedicure, taking a long bubble bath. Yes, those things do sound really nice, but they're not essential, and they're not necessarily things that you can incorporate into your everyday life. So when I'm talking about taking care of yourself, I'm talking about things that you can practice daily. So this might mean getting a little bit more sleep. Okay, so not being on our smartphones until the very moment we close our eyes and go to sleep, because not only does this disrupt our sleep, but it just keeps us fixed into this world that is constantly demanding our attention. Okay, so adopting other behaviors like having breakfast in the morning. You know, a lot of people skip breakfast, they don't have time. If you don't have 5-10 minutes to yourself, you don't have a life, okay? And life is too short to not be having breakfast. Other behaviors that we can include is a daily practice of self-care. So that might be some yoga, some meditation, prayers, taking time out to be with yourself. Taking a deep breath when you need to. Okay, now there are many other self-care practices that I won't quite go into here. This is already a little bit long, so I'll save it for another one. So let's talk about now about narcissism and truly the differences here. So narcissism, unlike self-love, stems from a feeling of inadequacy. So not feeling good enough for yourself. When you're not feeling good enough, you might adopt behaviors that will try and change who you are, whether this is your exterior, or you might try and adapt your personality to fit into a group that you might think will want this type of person. You may adopt behaviors that don't necessarily align with your values because you want to be seen as a whole new persona who's going to fit in. Narcissism is associated with using and manipulating people to get what you want. You tend to love things and use people, which is never going to be the key to happiness, okay? With narcissism, we might not particularly care or respect our own values or other people's values, which can lead to things such as engaging in situations, using other people to gain social status. We want validation from everyone else, when really we need to be focused on what we want. We're just focused on what we think people want us to want or how we want to be. So hopefully you can see the difference here already between narcissism and self-love. Narcissism, you're constantly seeking outside validation from everyone else. Self-love, we're reflecting inwards. What do we want? How do we feel? How are we going to deal with situations and respond to people? When people tend to have narcissistic tendencies, they will sacrifice their long-term happiness for the things they want now. You want instant gratification. I don't know, you could be engaging in behaviors to make you look a certain way, even though in 20, 50 years, it's not going to be beneficial for your overall well-being. Now, I won't go into this in too much detail because obviously everyone has their own right to modify their face and their bodies if they're not happy with who they are. But from studying the appearance embodiment in psychology, when you are changing the way that you look, maybe undergoing a procedure, you're not necessarily fixing any problem, as the problem is in your mind. So when you say, get a nose job, next minute, oh, my boobs aren't big enough, oh, my waist isn't small enough. It's a never-ending cycle of never being satisfied. Okay, there's always something that needs to be fixed and improved so we fit in more to society's ideals, which are extremely narrow, may I say. Whereas in self-love, like I said, you recognize that you have these flaws, things you might not necessarily like, but you learn to accept and live with them, appreciate your own beauty, your own quirks. Everybody's different, we come in different shapes and sizes, and that is okay, because if everyone was walking around looking the exact same as each other, what a boring world that would be, hey? So those are some of the differences. Now, of course, I'm not trying to shame narcissism or anything like that, as everybody has narcissistic tendencies. It's just a part of being human. I wouldn't be making these videos if I didn't have some narcissism in me to think that they would be good enough that people would watch them. Okay? So it's all about just learning to be mindful and recognizing when we might be displaying these tendencies, and just being aware and really present of when this happens. And slowly over time, we might change the way that we react to certain situations or people. and slowly we'll become more conscious of the way we're thinking and behaving, adopting a much more mindful approach. This isn't necessarily going to get rid of our narcissism. That's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to differentiate between how it can add value to our lives, such as belief in yourself to be able to achieve something, and how it can hold you back, such as damaging relationships, not appreciating or valuing other people, using people, seeking happiness externally. So this is what we want to look out for. Whereas a lot of us have these narcissistic tendencies, we all like to take a cheeky selfie now and then, put it on the gram, guilty. But what many of us don't seem to have is these self-love tendencies. So, our ability to recognize when we're feeling sadness, certain emotions, and just having compassion for ourselves rather than beating ourselves up, Constantly having these thoughts in your head who are devaluing as you are as a person. A lot of these thoughts in the head stems from childhood most of the time, feeling not being good enough, or there's too many to think of right now. So most of us aren't taking care of our basic needs. Are we getting enough sleep? Are we eating properly? Are we nourishing our bodies? Are we exercising each day? Are we taking a moment to just breathe? A lot of us seem to have too much going on in our lives. We're too busy. Okay, sure, people have very busy lives. I can appreciate that. But maybe you can wake up 5 minutes earlier and have that time to yourself. Maybe you can watch half an hour less of TV to just take that time, eat mindfully, feel the food, taste the food. We need to adopt more of these practices in order to become more loving to ourselves, not only ourselves, but more loving to others as well. When we learn to adopt these behaviors and we care more for ourselves, people will recognize what you are doing and they'll start to care more for themselves too. They'll see the value in what you're doing, how it's impacting you, and we'll just create this knock-on domino effect of more people recognizing the need to nourish themselves. Now that we know these things, and hopefully I've explained it okay, hopefully now we can become more mindful and aware and just start to adopt some of these practices and principles. And it doesn't have to be all at once. Tonight maybe you'll try and go to bed 15 minutes earlier. Tomorrow you'll make sure you have a nice nutritious breakfast. It doesn't have to be everything at once. We're going to be able to build habits into our daily routine better if we're just changing a little thing each day, and then once we've adapted that, we can add in something else. Okay, so not putting too much pressure on yourself either, because we're not always going to be in this mindset where you're like, I can do everything. Sometimes we're going to have those shitty days, okay? So just being patient with yourself. If you're having a shit day, allow yourself to lay in bed all day, cry, do what you need to do, and the next day is a fresh day. We'll begin again. So let's start spreading more love to ourselves and more love to other people, to the earth, the animals. So I hope you enjoyed this talk today on narcissism and self-love. If you enjoyed it, please comment, subscribe, feel free to like and share, spread the message. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.